And good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Albob. I, Sensei Albob, your griot, here to tell you a story. And a griot, what is a griot? Well, the griot is an individual who tells a story to those who wish to hear, who are capable of hearing, who are capable who don't have a closed mind. And therefore, this show is just for those who have an open mind, not the children, not made for children who have a wah, 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 it's all about me kind of closed mind, right? So, and remember, don't believe a word I say. And this show is strictly for entertainment's sake. Very similar to CNN, but CNN is not even for entertainment's sake. It's more, um, fear porn, right? And anger porn, and you know, silo porn. So, how you doing? It's Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day. It's my birthday. It's my birthday. Yes, it is. It is. It is. It's my birthday. It's my birthday. Do 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 do. It's also the day we celebrate Martin Luther King, and February is the month that we celebrate African Americans. And I, your Sensei Bob, is a African American that is melanin challenged. And as I grew up, I was taken away from my feral weasel family and sent to be with my unconditionally loving grandmother in Harlem. And our upstairs neighbor, Mamo, who had 5 children and a baby girl. So she was lactating. So I was stuck on Mamo's Mamo. And I was like Steve Martin in The Jerk. I was brought up by a black family and my Italian grandmother and everyone in Harlem. And in Harlem, there were no police because Harlem was ruled by grandmas. And Harlem was not all black. Basically, Second Avenue was like, that's why they put the UN. I mean, really, that's not why they put the UN on Second Avenue. The reason they put the UN on Second Avenue was because the property that the UN now stands on is still owned by the Rockefeller family. And the Rockefeller Foundation, which is right next to the United Nations, gave $50 million to build that edifice. And the building looks just like the 2001, black monolith, you know, and the domed flying saucer, which is a portent of things to come. And so right now, the United States is not doing too good. We, went to war at with the red flag of 9/11. And if you want to know, that was a crime scene. But immediately, within hours, Al Qaeda did it. We're going to Afghanistan, right? And basically, the folks who were in power were the people we put there. Mujahideen, who became the Taliban, and the Taliban said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa! We didn't do anything. We didn't attack you. Whoa, we'll give you. He's over there. Go get him, right?" And you know, um, you know, Bin Laden was, he didn't come from Afghanistan. No, he came from Saudi Arabia. He was a rich boy, right? And he was brought up. He was educated in Switzerland. He was again another poster child. A really good take on bin Laden and et al. is, the second or third Iron Man film, Tony Stark, right? And there was this guy who really loved Tony and, met him at a, some kind of nerd conference. And he was all about, creating, basically a biological, super soldier. I mean, he had biological genetic problems, and he was a wimp, and people always bullying him. So he was really smart, not Tony Stark, but the other guy. He made a genetic dynamic that make humans into a Caraba, or no, that's an Italian restaurant. The thing that is a genetic mishmash of lots of stuff, and you get, instead of a human, you get something else, right? Instead of a human and, you get a human and a tiger and a, gorilla. Who's calling? Oh, there he is. Hey, Henny, how you doing? Hey, buddy. What's shaking? Did you like that dinner I made you?
Yeah, that was amazing.
Yeah. I had my share. There's still a little bit more if you want it. What's shaking?
I wanted to say, when I smoked that
cigar,
when I smoked the cigar, it made me have I kept walking around really fast. I couldn't stop. It was all kept annoying.
Well, it's nicotine. It's a stimulant.
And I hope we all die.
It's a stimulant. You should stay away from stimulants. Nicotine and caffeine are not your friends. Those energy drinks, coffee, and they're not your friends. And nicotine is not your friend. So you shouldn't.
I had no idea it would affect me that much.
Oh, it does. Everyone's different. Everyone's different.
It was my dad who did it, I think, because it was Martin Luther King Day. That's one of his holidays he ate.
Oh, John, you can't. It's, I have issues. I have problems. I don't blame other people for those problems, I gained 240 pounds. It wasn't my parents who made me gain 240 pounds.
They had something to do with it.
Well, not really. It was me. It was me with a fork, with me eating. I didn't have to eat like the corporate desperate lawyers. I didn't have to. I dove into that pool of hedonism, and I have to say I enjoyed every piece of that. To die for chocolate cake, and so my body has, but I have lost most of that weight, and I have also got my body into a balanced state. So even though I have Charcot legs and I have diabetes and I have neuropathy, I have all of the, arthritis, I have all this stuff, I have been able through my diet and how I take care of myself, not, you saw me when I wake up in the morning, I have to meditate for an hour before I can even walk, I have to walk every, 25 minutes. So I don't blame my parents. I don't blame anybody. I take total responsibility for that. And I learned that that's not the way to go. So I lost the weight, and I keep myself under a regiment. And
my dad does it to Teza.
Well, but John, you are you. You can have your life. You can do whatever you want to do with it. And you are a really great guy. You're smart. You're talented. You can move forward from this point. You don't have to be stuck anywhere. You can do whatever you want. You can. Really, you can. I would not be here if I did not believe in you, John.
I felt awful. I really messed up. I said, I hope we all die.
Well, we're not going to. It's all right. You just have to give yourself a nice regiment where you can be in control of your body and your chemistry, and you can move forward and do what you want to do. You really can, John. You don't have to be controlled by thoughts that aren't really yours. You don't have to be controlled by your parents or anybody else. You really don't. You really, really don't, right?
I realized what it was that caused that. It was smoking and inhaling the cigar.
I said nicotine and caffeine are more not addictive, but they're stimulants. They stimulate, and everyone's different. Some people are not as but it affect. That's why I don't smoke loads of. That one cigar lasted me almost 2 weeks.
Oh, okay.
I took a little puff here, a little puff there, and that's about it, because it is a stimulant. But I don't, smoke 5 of them a day. A lot of people do, not me. So
Okay, well, I'm gonna go.
Okay, buddy. I have faith in you, and remember, God's love for you resides in your heart.
Okay.
Okay, bye. So that's my friend, and I don't give up on my friends, and I believe in him in a big way. So let's see what we got here. Anybody? Nobody showed up. Let's see. It's 6 o'clock here, so it's 10 o'clock there, and in Europe. So, we basically have this is a very interesting time, because this is very Dickens, Tale of Two Cities, best of times, worst of times. So let's see. So China is coming. The United States corporate structure looks at business like a checkers game. China looks at it like multi-dimensional chess, right? And so it's obvious. Look how the price of gasoline is going through the roof, right? And America is one of the, if not the largest producer of oil. We have all these wells. Why aren't we producing oil? Because it's obvious that oil we're going to electric cars and trucks, right? And this whole thing with all the truckers, in Canada, it is an excuse to go straight on to robot vehicles. No one's going to own a car or a truck, period, right? So, we're, Wednesday is supposed to be the beginning of the Ukraine war. Russia's saying, not going to happen. America's saying, oh, we know it's going to happen, right? So it's...
All right, so cordless headphones. You can watch movies through your phone. And y'all got electric cars.
Yeah.
Sovereignty and territorial integrity are non-negotiable for Germany. We therefore expect Russia to take clear steps to de-escalate the current tensions.
In Russia, the foreign minister was shown urging President
what's
Putin
Russia
to
doing?
keep
They
talking to
have
the West.
their troops on their side of the border. They're not going in any
But
country.
Boris Johnson spoke to the US president today too, and both are still sounding the alarm.
We are on the edge of a precipice, but there is still time for President Putin to
Sounds
step
like
back, and we're urging us for
1939.
dialogue, for a conversation to take place, and for the Russians to avoid what I think everybody, certainly everybody in the UK, can see would be a disastrous mistake.
It can be hard to make a connection between all the politicians warning of imminent
They all want a
war. Even
war.
the bombing
They're so
of the
screwing
city
up their own
Kiev.
countries.
And
What
how
better
things
thing to
actually
do is
feel
have
here
a war
on the
and blame
ground,
Russia.
Because even as the negotiations, the diplomacy continue, so does life here, pretty much as normal. Although beneath the surface, people do say they're feeling increasingly nervous now.
what we have to say and what we have to do is to be in panic and in being afraid every hour of our life. We don't want to live like that, and we just want to live. And
yeah, we are patient and ready for anything.
So we just hope that our city will be safe and our families will be safe.
For now, the musicians play on. Even the school trips haven't stopped, as Ukrainians still can't quite believe the worst predictions. Sarah Rainsford, BBC News, Kiev.
President Putin has long made it clear he sees Ukrainians and Russians as one people linked by history. But his desire to keep Ukraine within Russia's sphere of influence is threatened in part by Ukraine's wish to join NATO, the defense alliance of countries in Europe.
We made a deal with Russia that we wouldn't expand, and all of the Poland, Ukraine, not Ukraine, all of the small satellites are in NATO. We're right on their border. What would we do if Canada, if Russia put all its, things in Canada?
Crucial hours. Steve Rosenberg reports now from Moscow.
8 years after Russia annexed Crimea, is
Which was
Moscow
part of
afraid
Russia.
of another invasion of Ukraine? The West seems to think so, but what's the Kremlin's view? Western leaders may be warning of an imminent Russian military escalation in Ukraine, but Moscow dismisses all of that as hype, hysteria. And if you look at the way the state media here has been covering the Ukraine story, you'll see that the picture presented to the Russian public is the polar opposite of how the West sees things. So, according to that Kremlin picture, Russia has no plans for an invasion. Instead, it's America who's the aggressor and pouring weapons into Ukraine. It's NATO that's threatening Russia by expanding eastwards. Still, that doesn't explain why Moscow is massing more than 100,000 troops right now near Ukraine's border, and why it's launched large-scale military exercises in the region. So what is Vladimir Putin's aim? That is a difficult question to answer.
Savings by the truckload at American Freight Furniture Mattress Appliance.
Arrive in Romania, adding to the 900 U.S. troops already in Eastern Europe, in Romania. So God bless the people of Romania and Eastern Europe. Russia's not going to invade any other country. They have one specific objective, and there's something called mutually assured destruction. We learned in the Cold War that once they decide, or we decide, to elevate things, we are at DEFCON 4 right now, let's say to DEFCON 2, which is what the Cuban Missile Crisis was, defense readiness system pertaining to nuclear weapons. We have enough armament to end the planet. You have AOC and everybody else saying, climate change is an existential issue. Well, okay, we don't know when the planet will end because of climate change. In a day or a week, probably less than a week, probably in a day or two, the planet could end. Probably in a day, the planet could end from a nuclear confrontation. We're pushing Russia. We're trying to antagonize simply to save face, because Democrats and media spent 5 years blaming the Kremlin for installing Trump. Now they have egg all over their face because this is taking place.
Welcome, everybody, to the Gray Zone. Thanks for tuning in. Very excited to be doing
Hey,
this live
Fish.
stream today.
Good to see you, girlfriend. Happy Valentine's Day. Love you so much. Cuddle, cuddle,
And we're
kiss,
gonna be
kiss,
talking
kiss.
about this unfolding, whatever you want to call it, crisis or just drama in Ukraine, with every day the U.S. giving us some new euphemism on a suggestion that Russia is about to invade. First it was imminent, then it was maybe before
All
the
of this
Olympics.
conflict, all
Now
of
the
this
latest one from
chaos
CNN, I'll just read it to
is
you,
just to
is
show how
US
incompetent all these
indicates
politicians
Russia
are.
clearly advancing their
And that we're
ability
right on
to
the edge
invade.
of
Whatever
when
that
is
means.
the
So, to help us make
populace
sense of
going to
what's
say,
going on,
enough,
we're
okay,
joined
you
today
guys suck.
by Dmitry Polyansky. He is the Deputy Russian Ambassador to the United Nations.
Here's the ambassador to the UN.
Thank you very much.
Russian.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Max.
I just have trouble in understanding what does it mean in English. My English is not good enough to advance its capabilities.
To advance its ability to invade, yeah.
My
Yeah.
God.
Well, we're all left puzzling as to what they're
Such creative people we have.
So this is the
This
UN
is all
ambassador to Russia.
ridiculous, of course, and we learn each and every day something about ourselves, about our alleged plans to attack, to invade, and this comes to a total surprise to us. And this comes to a total surprise of Ukrainians as well.
Well, of course,
which
this is propaganda. This guy is a diplomat.
Looks like
That's
only
propaganda.
The Americans are sure of something, but they don't share this information neither with us nor with the Ukrainians. So I don't know who can de-escalate this situation. I think only those who have escalated it, and in fact, it's not us.
And that has been, it started with Obama, right?
Let us ask them to de-escalate.
It started with George
easy.
H. Bush when he promised
sounds like
Mikhail
their
Gorbachev that we
intelligence
wouldn't go
on
into the
Russian
satellite
intentions
countries, but
is
we
better than
did.
yours, Ambassador.
That has
Poland.
always been the case, but speaking about U.S. or British intelligence, sometimes equals to a joke already nowadays.
Well, I want to ask you about the difference between intelligence and propaganda because there's a real gray zone there. And I'll refer to comments by your colleague, Maria Zakharova, who is the always fiery spokesperson
Hey, Janie.
for
Happy
Russia's foreign
Valentine's Day.
ministry. And
Kiss,
she said
kiss,
the
love, love,
following,
hug, hug.
yesterday, I believe.
Cuddle,
the
cuddle.
US and UK have pulled out a tool from their stash that they've been keeping for a good half century. And now they're waving it around like a club, supporting controlled hysteria through CNN, Bloomberg, and British tabloids.
Just like,
thereby
we went into
influencing
Iraq
public
because of
opinion in
weapons
their
of
countries. And she called this
misdirection,
war propaganda,
there were no weapons of
even,
mass destruction.
asserting that this
We
was
knew
a
they didn't have them
violation of
because we
international
sold
law.
them, the ones they did
She
have,
also
and we
claimed
blew
that
them up
Russia
in
does
91.
not use war propaganda, and you took her comments to tweet a reference to Tony Blair claiming Iraq had WMD. So it sounds like you and the official voice of the Russian Foreign Ministry are clearly stating that Russia has no plans whatsoever to make any incursion into what is considered Ukrainian territory. Is that correct? And what is so dangerous about the rhetoric that we're hearing in our media in the U.S.?
Well, you're absolutely right, Max. When I'm giving interviews to some U.S. and British sources, I always ask them to find me quotes who from our politicians, diplomats, deputies, whoever, who has ever threatened Ukraine with aggression, who has said that we will attack. They can't, of course, because no one did. The whole hype was created and promoted by, first of all, U.S. authorities, then the British joined.
Now, this is all almost a smokescreen to what the real problem is, and that's this.
It's a market where military designs, strategic designs, designs that have to go 5 years out, 10 years out. I mean, the Japanese used to have 100 years out. They used to have a 100-year plan at Toyota. Not anymore, because they went to Harvard and they found out you don't need to do that. I won't even be here in 100 years. That's kind of like what the Chinese are still doing.
So then how did Tesla get so far ahead? If they have American workers who, don't have maybe exactly the same work ethic as Chinese workers, how can they be so far ahead?
Well, the easy answer, of course, is they have Elon Musk. Elon Musk does not have an MBA. He is a technocrat extraordinaire. He knows technology. He gets excited about new things. I was in a design review with him, and I was astounded that the richest man in the world, nothing to replace it. When I said that the crossover point was going to be 2028,
we're talking about electric cars. We're not going to have gas-powered anything.
And this is what I've got in the back of my mind. A lot of those cars are going to be Chinese, and they are going to come in wave after wave after wave after wave.
Just like the Japanese did in the 70s.
The guys here cannot say no. If the U.S. government says no, then China will nationalize all of the plants that all the foreigners are building at in China, and they'll instantly go bankrupt because most of their profit
That
now
means
is
GM,
from the
Ford,
China market, not from the U.S. market. So
Audi,
I see a tidal
Volkswagen.
wave of problems coming that obviously
This is
the
why
rest
we're
of
going
the
to war, because
world
our
doesn't see.
business
I don't know
plan
how they
is
could
dead
miss
in the
this.
water.
Maybe it's just because I'm old, but I'm telling you, there's a storm tsunami that's coming that is going to make the Japanese, and people will forget when the Japanese came after this.
So let me just ask. So, Chinese car manufacturers right now are focusing on EVs. They're making pretty decent EVs, but what about safety? I mean, like, people really care about safety, and we think, cars made in China, we're used to the stuff that you buy at Walmart made from China. We're not built to last. And do you think Chinese companies will start buying brands like you just mentioned? Geely's, bought Volvo, MG is bought by a Chinese company, Lotus, even Pirelli has been bought by a Chinese company. Do you think they'll do that so that it kind of hides their moves more?
China
If they can
bought
get
up
something
every
for a
American
bargain, they'll
company.
take it. MG badge came for free, basically, and that was Shanghai Automotive. They got that for next to nothing. And Volvo, Ford couldn't get rid of that fast enough. They could not make any money at it. Same thing with Tata buying Range Rover or Land Rover. They couldn't make a penny at it, and now all of a sudden it's rolling in dough. And Jaguar, another good example, right? All these different badges, they don't seem to
These
work.
are high-end
under US
automobiles,
management.
not junky
And the
cars.
reason for that is because of the short-sighted, checker kind of moves. The only place that Americans can really make a tremendous amount of money, American car companies, is right here. And even that is dwindling. The Chinese, they loved the imported American cars. Then they went over there. The long and short of it is the Chinese worker really wants to work. It's like a source of national pride. I can't put into words how these guys like to work and how they want to try and catch up and beat the Japanese. It's an amazing phenomenon. That work ethic is
American
is
worker?
going to be very difficult for anybody over here to catch up to or exceed.
Now, how does Tesla fit into this? Do you think that Tesla is going to be able to succeed?
Yes. This is like we're going to run a 100-yard dash, and everybody's at the starting line except for Tesla. And they got 1 yard to run. Unless you're tearing apart vehicles every day like we are, unless you're doing that every day, you can't comprehend how fast these guys are moving and how far ahead they are. I'm telling you flat, it's every time we what? Are you kidding me? People
Why
talk
do
about
we
some
not have
technology,
chips for our
and the next
cars?
thing you know, it's stuck inside of a Tesla. Look at that chip that they just came up with, the new teraflop
Listen
chip.
to this.
Are you kidding me? Who can even make this thing? Okay, so if you look at the original car that we took apart, the Model 3 we took apart, and you look at the controller board, okay, there are 3 NVIDIA chips there, right? They designed their own chip. It went down to 2. And now the next boards that come out, it'll have 1. Oh, there's a chip shortage. Hey, you know what? Let me think about this.
Listen
if
to
I
this.
could take 2/3 of the chips out of my circuit board, how much faster or better could it be? And then you look at these other ones. So you look at the chips on the different boards, right? You've got 10 millimeter chips, 5 millimeter chips, and now we're looking at 3 millimeter and in essence, a 1 millimeter chip that they're working on. Okay, if you're looking at the 3 and the 1 millimeter chips, that's where all of the guys who are making chips, that's where they want to go. They want to go in that direction because they can make a whole lot more money at it. But everybody else wants to buy the 10 because, well, it's old and reliable. And look, here it is, right here. Here's my standard. It says I have to use that 10. The 10 millimeter chip is going away. They don't want to build
That's why
that,
you
so
can't
they put
find
it
any
in
chips for your
Malaysia or
cars.
Indonesia. That's where chips go to die, right? That's the chip graveyard. Well, guess what? They didn't ramp up fast enough. How many times have you heard Tesla crying about, we can't get chips?
They don't.
None.
They make their own.
None. Why? Because they're not using the old style chips. They don't have many of them that they need that are even at 5. There's a couple of 10 millimeter chips, but mostly are 5 or less. 5 millimeter chips all day long out of Taiwan. But those other ones, not so much. And how many chips are made here? Next to none. Why? Oh, we can get them cheaper from China.
Why doesn't every home in the US have solar panels? The number one reason is not about sunlight, or weather, or even politics. It's actually just because most people don't.
Idiots. Here we go. I moved my checkers and look, I got one. Yeah, that kind of crap doesn't work. This is not an MBA market anymore. This is a general kind of market. This is a market where military
will summit Monday night. The meeting took place just days after the U.S. and China announced plans to work together to confront the climate emergency. Tension's been rising between the two nations, with some saying a new Cold War is developing. During the summit, Xi warned Biden supporting Taiwanese independence would be, quote, playing with fire. He also criticized the U.S. for building new alliances in the Pacific region to counter China's rise. Xi said dividing the world into blocs would, quote, inevitably bring disaster to the world. Biden raised concerns about China's human rights record and what the U.S. has described as unfair trade and economic policies. Both leaders spoke publicly as the summit began. This is Xi Jinping.
As the world's two largest economies and the permanent members of the UN Security Council, China and the United States need to increase communications and cooperation. We should each run our domestic affairs well and at the same time shoulder our share of international responsibilities and work together for the most noble cause of world peace and development. This is the common aspiration of our people in China and the United States, as well as the people of all countries in the world. And it is also the common mission of the leaders of China and the United States. A sound Chinese-U.S. relationship is required for advancing our two countries' respective development and for safeguarding a peaceful and stable international environment, including finding effective responses to global challenges such as climate change and the COVID pandemic.
And this is President Biden speaking from the Roosevelt Room at the White House. At the start of Sands, Beijing had been investing much of its accumulated trade surplus in the integration of the world island of Africa, Asia, and Europe into an economic powerhouse. Alfred McCoy, welcome back to Democracy Now! So if you can talk about this summit, you wouldn't
So we
quite
spend all our money
understand the kind
in
of
wars,
tension,
and China has
that
built
is between
infrastructure
the United
across
States
the
and
planet.
China right now, the world's two largest economies. But if you could talk about the significance of this, and then how close we are to a Cold War or hot war with China.
The key issue in terms of immediate conflict between Washington and Beijing is Taiwan. As you said earlier, Amy, President Xi of China said that the United States was playing with fire over Taiwan. By way of background, President Xi has committed himself within China to the reunification of Taiwan with China. He wants that to be a critical part of his legacy. And on the other side, President Biden stated just last month in his town meeting that the United States was committed to the defense of Taiwan.
I mean, we're going to put blood and money there.
Taking positions over Taiwan, which if they're fully pursued, will lead to conflict. And this is another problem for the United States. The New York Times has reported that the Pentagon has war-gamed a war over Taiwan
Listen to
between the
this.
United States and China. And in the last 18 of these war games, the United States has lost 18 times. China has the world's most sophisticated anti-ballistic missiles, the most sophisticated missile defense. Taiwan is extremely close to China. And if the United
50
States
miles.
moved aircraft carriers into the Taiwan Straits, like we did in the last conflict back in the 1990s, China could destroy those aircraft carriers. It could sink
Easy.
those aircraft carriers. So the United States, in the immediate future, is faced with the possibility of fighting war over Taiwan.
Just like what happened between
and
Spain and
if that
England.
conflict emerged, the United States would have to either retreat in defeat and see Taiwan conquered, or the United States would have to go to war and fight a war that it would probably lose. And that's one issue, but there's also a deeper geopolitical struggle going on. Over the past 5 centuries, every world hegemon has done one thing the same way. Every world hegemon, from Portugal to Holland, Britain to the United States, and now China, has dominated the Eurasian landmass. which today is home to 70% of the world's population and productivity. And with the $4 trillion that China made by 2014, as a result of its open trade with the United States, China's invested $1.2 trillion in this massive infrastructure, laying down a steel grid of rail, road, and gas pipeline, integrating the vast Eurasian landmass into a single market in which trade and power, as if by natural law, is going to flow towards Beijing. China is also working to break the U.S. geopolitical hold over the Eurasian landmass. During the Cold War, we controlled what are known as the axial ends of Eurasia through the NATO alliance in Western Europe and 4 bilateral treaties with mutual defense treaties with Japan, South Korea, Philippines, and Australia. And from these 2 axial positions, we ringed Eurasia with bands of steel, aircraft carriers, jets, fighter bombers to dominate Eurasia. And now China is punching through those circles of steel
with commerce,
breaking the U.S. geopolitical grip over Eurasia, and through the Belt and Road Initiative, consolidating its control. Moreover, China has built 40 ports ringing the Eurasian landmass
and
down the
didn't
coast of Africa.
charge a nickel to
So
those
the
countries.
combination of this geopolitical circling of the coastlines of Eurasia, combined with this massive grid of infrastructure across the continent, is placing China in control where it is going to dominate the Eurasian landmass. And that is the key to geopolitical power, has been for the last 5 centuries and will likely be for the rest of this century as well.
Well, Professor McCoy, I'd like to ask you a couple of things about that. First of all,
as I mentioned, Professor Eric Heyer will be speaking today. He received his PhD in political science.
Anyway, so here we are. I just gave you a little hello, Jane Fish, everybody. Here it is, Valentine's Day, and I love you all. And I just gave you a little thumbs thing of the world in a interesting little thing. And you know what's interesting is that what I just played you is a soap opera that has been played out for the last, as the guy said, the last 5 centuries. And the thing that's missing that no one's talking about is where does E.T. fit into this? You know, and I was talking about, you know, this last night or this morning about how E.T. has, you know, we are probably E.T.'s high school biological, science project. And we, I was just watching the 1980s version of V and then the 90s version of V, The Visitors, and Gene Roddenberry's Earth Final Conflict. I mean, pretty much that is, and then in the 60s, there was The Invaders, that is the real interesting thing, is because it goes to the existential dynamic of who the heck are we? Where did we come from? And what are we doing here? And my little life story that I've been telling you stories about. And good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with your Sensei Al Bob. That's me. And I'm here to tell you stories. And don't believe a word I say. And remember, you want to get a hold of me, it's the dudeawake42 at Gmail, the dudeawake42 at Gmail. And I want to thank all of you who've been putting things in my PayPal. It's my birthday, and it's Happy Valentine's Day. And also today is Martin Luther King's, Remembrance Day. And it always amazes me when so many people go, oh, why do we give that guy, Martin Luther King, he was a womanizer. Well, I think every guy guys are like the horny dog. They're always humping somebody's leg, And Martin at least was putting most of his passion into, helping save America's soul, And he was a pretty good guy. He was a happy-go-lucky guy. I mean, when he got shot dead, he was on the balcony kind of tap dancing, You should go, the speech he gave, it's called the Mountaintop Speech. The night before he gets shot, he's there to support the union guys of the garbage strike. And he has, they have a rally, and he gives his speech about not like, the rally thing, but he talks about life and why are we here? And he talks about why his life, what he says, my father was a real well-known minister, and I could have just followed easily in his footsteps. We had a nice house. We always had 2 cars. We never worried about anything, and everyone loved and respected us. But why did I do this? Because I was called to do this, right? And he followed that path that he was called, And so this mountaintop speech is an amazing speech where he goes, I'm at the top of the mountain and I can see the promised land. And then he goes into, I'm still a young man. I mean, he died, I think, in his, 40s, right? And I'm, my children are still young. I want to, live a long life. I want to grow up and see my children grow up. I want to see my grandchildren. I mean, all his kids were like, I think the oldest was a teenager, right? He had like quite a few kids and they were all little. And, he gives this speech the day before he gets shot, assassinated, about he wants to live a long life and see the promised land. He goes, I'm at the top of the hill. I can see it. And I may not get there with you, but I see it and I know, and we're not even close to the promised land, right? But the interesting thing is, as Plato said, it's a wise man who's guided by the stars. It is a fool who's led by them, right? And so right now, and, and I've been talking about this, 2 years ago, I've been talking about the big splat. Before, back in 2019, I started this channel in May of 2018. 2019, in October, November, December, I started talking about the big splat, that things were coming, the stars were lining up, things are going to change in a big way. There's no way of stopping it, and it's going to be for the good. And the big splat is just like Wile E. Coyote going after the Roadrunner. He ties that big Acme firecracker around his back, and he lights it, and beep, 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 and the Roadrunner goes flying by. He lights it, zip, his rocket's like catching up to the Roadrunner, almost there. He's just about to grab the Roadrunner, and the Roadrunner stops, and there's a 90-degree turn, and Wiley goes right off the cliff and woo, straight up in the air, and he's kind of, the wind is like blowing in his ears, and he's like looking down, and it's like 7,000 feet down to the canyon floor, and all of a sudden the rocket goes its little ears are flapping, and you see him go. He becomes a little dot, boom, hits the ground, and then the camera, and Wiley's like crushed into the floor, and he kind of looks up, and there's this big rock, and it's like, well, that's us, the big splat, right? But that won't be the end of the world. I mean, come on, look, an asteroid hit this place and killed everything on it, but we're still here. And that's part of this whole dynamic that I talked a few nights ago about, that time is not linear. And every time we think it is, no, it's you're only in that moment right here, and I've been talking about, don't try, do your best, do it. And you don't have to be perfect, but do your best. And if everyone did their best, and stepped up to who they could be. Earlier on, John called up and was going on about this, that, and the other thing. I kept saying, John, it's all up to you. You can, and that's, and I ask people, so what are you? And they'll go, I'm a boy, I'm a girl, I'm a this, I'm a that, right? No, you are the decider. You get to decide what you're going to do in that moment, right here. You can decide to do your best, be your best, do good. Don't let the nagging nabobs of blah 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 over here. Don't even listen to that stuff. I don't listen to that, right? And my sensory net is a lot stranger and wider than most people's, but I don't wear blinders. Most people do, in religion or political or economic. I don't have any of those blinders, right? I don't watch Fox. I don't watch CNN. I don't watch MSNBC or public radio or TV or none of the above. Don't even go there, right? What I do is in the moment, I do my best, right? And that's why the show, right? I don't really script this. People send me a whole bunch of stuff on my thread, and I kind of look at it and I figure out which ones I'm going to play. And, I call up some people and see how they're doing and all of the above. But I don't really script the show because I try just to do my best in that moment, right? So let's see here. So here it is, Valentine's Day. And I love you all 5 of you or 20 of you, or how many of you are there, contacts. Let's see if Maxo picks up. Heavenly, yep. Land of milk and honey, yep. The promised land. And the promised land is where we are all brothers and sisters, where it's not the color of your skin that counts, but how good you're doing. Whoops. Let's see what Rev is up to. So, what do you want to do, guys? What are you thinking about? What are you going to do good? Do your best at this moment.
Your call has been.
Yep. Let's see if Soul Man picks up. This guy is an interesting guy. He's a young scholar. He has Nope. Okay, let's see. I'll try one. Our good friend, Mr. SC. Whoops. Do. Well, okay. Those were 5 different people with different points of view. That might have been interesting, but I didn't pick up. So that's what it is. So, so I've been looking at all of this stuff going on, and it could be scary, but like I said, I'm old enough. 1970s, now that was scary. I lived in neighborhoods in New York that, if the OGs didn't know you, they'd kill you, I lived in Little Italy on the west, on McDougal Street near Father Fagan Square. And my buddy Howard owned the building. His family had lots of real estate and they died. And the three boys got, split all the buildings up. And Howard got the buildings downtown. And one of them was an apartment building that had, how many? It had about 20 apartments in it. Had a storefront, right? And and there was one apartment that had a fire in it, which was on the second floor. So he kind of closed up the second floor, put a door there, and but the apartments above, the old mobster grandmas lived upstairs, and they were paying like $8 rent control for these apartments. And Soho was starting to become a whoop-de-doo place, and he could rent them out for $1,000, and these people are paying $7. So it was during Jimmy Carter's time, and so the oil embargo had occurred, and so oil it's the 70s, and it was a really time, and so the federal government said, well, we have a lot of natural gas, and so if you change your boiler from oil to natural gas, we'll give you tax incentives. So Howard did, and he kind of pulled the boiler out because he was a plumber. He pulled the oil burner out and put a gas boiler in, and kind of hooked it up, but didn't turn it on full blast, right? And he disconnected a lot of the grandma's radiators, and he also, Jimmy wanted to have everything efficient, so those tax incentives to replace the windows with thermoplane windows, so he ripped all the windows out in the summertime, and so he gets the federal check for the windows and for the boiler, and which is probably $20,000-$40,000, and he heads to Brazil, right, to have a good time. And he leaves the Italian grandmas, to fend for themselves. And we were turning the second floor into and the ground floor into like a nightclub / really super duper fancy restaurant. So the back was it was kind of based on Luna's. So the really beautiful kitchen that, on one side had seating, had like banquettes, that you could sit and have dinner, and a big backyard that we had pushed out into where we were going to have outdoor eating there. And so we had done all of that, and we had pretty much done the dining room in the front with a big bar made out of glass block, and I put neon in. And Howard, after everything was done, upstairs was going to be dining rooms, but Howard and I were living up there, and really nice. And Howard took off, and one day he got the check. He goes, I'm going to go to Brazil and have a good time. And I said, Howard, we're in the middle, this is September. It's still warm, but you've got all the windows out. The grandmas are going to freeze to death. Good. Let them die. What? So I want those apartments so I can rent them out to the yuppies at $2,000-$3,000 an apartment. And I said, Howard, this isn't going to go over well. All those grandmas up there, they are mobsters' moms and grandmas, and they're not going to be happy. And I know all those guys, and I work with them, and Howard, you're putting me in a very difficult place. And I had already, when we were taken out, because I didn't take the windows out, Howard did with the, like his slave guys, and they just kind of pulled the windows out, put a dumpster out front, and threw them into the dumpster, and then put plastic over the windows, and Howard left, right? And the radiators really didn't work, and there was hardly any hot water, and so he kind of split, and again, it as a little game of checkers. That's oh wow, I got $40,000. I'm going to go to Brazil and have a really good time. Maybe I'll buy a house in Brazil. Blah blah blah. Right. So he does, and I hear nothing from Howard, just nothing. Right. And so I'm doing my best. So I'm like double plasticking all the windows, and I get a friend of mine who's a plumber, and we kind of get the boiler working so the grandmas have a little heat. And the mobsters see that I am doing my best, and I'm not. And one of the mobsters said, "Need any money to?" I said, "You know some plumbers, boiler guys, So we, between that guy and my buddy who was a plumber and me, we kind of got the heat working, which Howard didn't, because when he left, I said, I can't do this, John. John Howard, and he goes, no, don't turn the boiler on. Keep the windows, let the plastic break through. And so, I went down to Canal Plastic and got like real plastic, not just, 1 mil thin, drop cloths. I got real plastic and basically, gave some level because I couldn't, afford putting windows in there. Anyway, so September, October, November, and we have a cold November. Now I've gotten the heat working and going at full blast, but basically it's still rough on the grandmas, and I'm like helping them up with their groceries. And so the mobsters, because Mike Finelli, who's like the diplomat of mobsters in New York, he's my godfather, and I do all this work for his restaurants and all of his other real estate. And so I'm the guy who all those guys, Mike Finelli's so they're not going to mess with me. B, they see that I'm really trying hard taking care of their grandmas. So he's a good boy. He is a good boy, And but around Halloween time when things are really, but we've got the restaurants. I'm having parties there. I live in a very palatial apartment upstairs, and so I'm not unhappy about this. And the thing about the upstairs apartment, there was half of it that was all complete. Then there was another half that was like my office that had a door from the thing, and the whole back wall was missing because we were going to build a big veranda out into it. So, and we had a wall, so all of this was, sealed, but this little kind of thing was, when it snowed, the snow would come in anyway. So my father hadn't seen me in 8 years, and I had met one of his friends on McDougal, and then I was working on his boiler, so I looked like I was a black guy. I was just covered in coal dust, and he stops. I go, "Hey, Bob, what's going on?" He looks at me. He had no idea who the heck this guy is. I look like, Mammy, how I love you. And so I kind of said, "It's me, Al, Ray's son." And he looks at me, "Al," because this guy's known me since I was a little kid. And he goes, because he hadn't seen me, God, in like 19 years. And so he goes, "Where do you live?" I said, "I live right here. This is my building." "Your building? You own the building?" I said, "Well, I'm kind of somewhere in between." But, and I said, "I'm up on the second floor. It's just the doors are always open, so just come on up." So about a week later, I'm in bed with my girlfriend, and it was one of these days when it was really hot when we went to bed, and when we woke up, it was snowing inside the apartment, and it was like a drift of snow. And my girlfriend at the time was African American, and so boom, 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 boom on the door. So I kind of get up, and I'm kind of naked. I got like a sheet wrapped around me, and the snow is like whirling around. And I opened it up, and there's my dad in a business suit, and he's looking at me, and the snow is like blowing in his face from my apartment, and I'm naked, but I got a sheet around me, and there's a black woman in the bed on the floor. Right now, if he had come in through the front door and going up the stairs, the place is like a palace, it's like, whoa. But this was my, side room, and I don't know, it was one of those days. It was like 70 degrees when we went to bed, and then in the morning there was a snowdrift, right? So it was too hot because everything was closed up, and the AC didn't work, and I hadn't really. It had worked, but it wasn't working. So we were, like sleeping on the veranda, and then it snowed. One of those interesting things of weather, and they're talking about, climate change. Well, boy, this was climate change. 70 to a snowdrift, And there's my dad. He's looking at me, and I got really long hair, and he hasn't seen me about 7 years, and he's crying, and he just turns around and walks away, and I just said, just closed the door. I didn't say, Dad. I just closed the door. My girlfriend said, "Who's that guy?" I said, "That's my dad." "What? You didn't invite him in?" I said, "Really?" So that's the kind of neighborhood that I was in then. It was right in transition. It was like mobsters and poor people and super rich people just a block over there in Soho. And it was one of these, and that was in the 1970s. That was New York. New York was, bankrupt. They went from having 30,000 cops in 1969 to having, and John's grandfather was the chief of police then. Really nasty guy. I mean, people talk about, stop and frisk. In those days, New York City police was stop and kill, and if you're a black guy, I saw when I was in High Point, North Carolina, being a photojournalist for the High Point Enterprise, the first real shot I shot was a lynching in Greensboro, right? And I brought, I went into the, where all our cameras were, and there was a large format camera. And I was thinking, this is going to, I'm going to be just like they did it during the Civil War, where you put the little cape over the thing and right? And so large format camera is just that. The negative is 10 inch by 10 inch. Whereas, like a Nikon, it's a 35 millimeter, or if you have a Hasselblad, it's 2.25. So I had this, the box of that kind of came in a big suitcase. And then there was this other suitcase that had 2 Hasselblads and 2 Nikons. And Nikons were motor drive, Hasselblads. One was a motor drive. So, and a super duper killer strobe. They were Nazi strobes. Mogelblaster 3000, meaning it was 300,000 lumens. It's like 2 nuclear weapons. So I set that camera on the tripod, and where they were going to do the lynching. So, it was going to be a sunny day, so I stopped it way, way down. So I'd have super duper depth of field. Everything from the lens to infinity would be in focus, right? And I had these 2 gigantic strobes. So, hit the shutter, boom, right? Take that out, put the other one in, take that out, boom, take it out. So I did until I got in focus from the front door, down the steps, across the park to the old hanging nigger tree, right? Now you have to realize the word nigger. What is that word? Word doesn't mean black person. It makes stupid person. Then when you take it even further, it's not stupid like intelligence. It is a person who has no power over their life. That's what a nigger is, right? And so when we're all, the N-word, and that's even more dishonest, using the word the way it is, not to say this is a black person, no, but a person who's has no power over their life. So, and on that tree, it said the old nigger hanging tree, right? And so I set my camera up, and I showed up there the thing was supposed to happen at 4:00, and it was September, right? The clocks hadn't changed. So it was going to be, somewhat sunny until 7:30, right? So anyway, the hanging's supposed to be around 6 o'clock, right? Or 5:30, somewhere in there. So I go see the sheriff, and I have my little press pass, and and the sheriff in High Point knew this guy and called him up and said, "Hey, I'm sending a kid to take pictures of the hanging. Treat him right. He's a good kid. He's one of my boys." Meaning, I did. I took pictures, meaning High Point, North Carolina Police Department did not have a CSI. So, and there were a lot of murders in that town. So the newspaper used to do all the photography for the police, and nobody ever wanted to do that job. So it's just there the first week. My boss calls me up, says, "Hey, you got to, go to this address." And I had met the sheriff like 4 or 5 days to get my little press pass and talk to him, blah, blah, blah. And he introduced me to the people I would be working for him in the police. And one was this sergeant guy. Everyone called him Sarge. And he had been a sergeant in World War II and the Korean War. And now he was the head sergeant in the police department. So he was the most powerful, the chief. And then there's two, captain, and then a couple lieutenants, and then Sarge. But Sarge kind of had the authority. He was the boss. And so the first time I shot, I met the chief. He gave me my credentials. I met the top 5 people in the force, and the lady who ran the evidence locker, and the other lady was the judge's administrator, and the person who took care of the jail. So I met all those people, right? And so anyway, I got a call to go shoot these 4 guys. Had, and everyone worked. What was truly interesting, High Point was this big, it was the furniture capital of the world. It had a big, where they had a big furniture mart, where they'd sold the furniture. They had big furniture shows. And I was there for almost a year. And once they learned that I was a lighting designer from New York, the guy who ran the mart said, "Can you light this for us?" I said, "Sure." They had everything, so I did my artiness and made it really look special. And so I did stuff like that in that town for people, and they really loved that, and that I was a nice kid, and I was always really respectful to everybody, and I just, everyone loved me in that. I could still be in that town. But so anyway, High Point, let's say union, all these factories turning out furniture for the world, they were a union shop. So everyone on the floor got paid the same, whether they're white or black, they got paid the same thing. So the guys, were union brothers, white and black. They'd go out to the parking lot. They both had the same Buick, and they would drive, and they'd go out, and black guys went to black side town. But they all lived in the same kind of house, and the black folk actually had their own school district, and their school district was better than the same socioeconomic crew of the white guys because they knew the value of education. So the people made it their school. They were involved. They didn't just, PTA. They were made sure that everyone was doing a good job and their kids were learning, and that school was far better. And across America, the black schools in places like that were better than the white schools. Right? Even though the state gave the white guys more money, it was still Brown where, separate but equal, and the black folk put more onus on education. So anyway, so High Point was a very interesting town. Everyone got along, but they'd get drunk and kill each other like unbelievable. So the first thing I shot was I get this call, and I show up, and these 4 brothers lived in this house, and they got a little drunk, and they all had shotguns, and, they were in the parlor, and they were playing cards, and they got drunk, and somebody said somebody was cheating. And before you know it, they went after each other with shotguns in a very small room that was about 12 by 12, and there's no place to hide. Boom, 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 boom. Arms over here, heads over there. It was quite a mess. So I show up, it's summertime. I'm wearing shorts and flip-flops and a T-shirt. And I met the Sarge. I kind of had this little map of High Point, so it wasn't hard to find. And I pulled up in the, it was like the Batmobile. It was black LTD, an old police car that, so it had a, police scanner and police radio. Anyway, so I get the call. I go, and it's like about 6:30. Sun's still up, and there's Sarge smoking a cigar and waiting for me. And he goes, "Okay, I want you to go into my car, and there's some waiters in the back in the trunk." I'm thinking waiters, you guys with a tray, and they're gonna, but no, that's not the waiters that that he was talking about. He was talking about the kind of things you put on and go fishing, go walking in the water, right? And so I open it up, and there's like guns and all kinds of stuff, but there's a box that says fishing waders. I pull them up, and they're like these boots. You put them, and they go up to your chest, and they were white, not green, not blue, not black, white. And they totally sealed me up. I took my shoes off, my flip-flops off, and put my foot. Oh, that's kind of nice. So I walk up to the guy, and he goes, "Okay, let's go in." So we go in. I said, "Bring your camera." So I bring my Nikon, and there's body parts everywhere. And I'm going, "Ooh." So I start but I've seen this before in New York. So I'm like I'm Ouija, and he's watching me do this, and I shoot a roll. And he goes, No. We have to do this forensically. And I go, because you have to take pictures because they're going to be used as evidence. I don't know what the heck you just did, but that's not the way to do this. And I said, "See, I'm going to put these numbers out, right? And for each body part or each body or each place, blood spatters, I'm going to put these numbers out." And he had like 4 or 5 1s, 4 or 5 2s, 4 or 5. So each little site, right? And you put them like north, south, right? In 4 different directions, right? And they all, had, one, and 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D. So you kind of put it around, and then you took a picture straight down, this way, this way, this way, that way. And so he shows me, this is how you do it. So I do it the way he told me. And then, he goes, "Very good. You did a great job." And then he goes, "Come in the back." Because I was just covered in blood. The white waiters were, not me, but I was walking, and that blood, there's so much blood, and it didn't start to smell, and the bugs hadn't shown up, but it is slicker than snot. And if I had been in my shorts, if he was a real asshole, he would have said, "Yeah, here, go do it." But he wasn't. He was a nice enough guy to tell me to go put the waders on. So because I would have walked in that gook in my flip-flops, without knowing any better, right? So, and he taught me how to forensically shoot, and it just took me from that point on. Boy, I did it like clockwork, right? So anyway, so he says, "Come in the back of the house. There's a hose." Well, he turns it on me, hoses me down. He then, he's gotten my flip-flops out of the back of his car, and he hoses me down. He says, "Get out of that thing. Here's your flip-flops." He folds it up, puts it. He goes, "So let's go get some pie at the Pink Teacup." And I hadn't been to the Pink Teacup yet, so we went. It was probably about 10 p.m. And it was one of those points where the dinner crowd had gone, and there are a few people, having a little something. But it's a really nice place, right? And we come in, and I'm with Sarge, and Sarge is like the mayor of the town. I mean, everyone deals with Sarge, not the mayor, not the chief, not the captains, not the judge, but Sarge. So he's got, and he's got a lot of side hustles going on. So we go in there, and he introduces me to a mammy, and her name was Ethel, but everyone called her Mammy. Everyone had a mammy. And I had a mammo. She was Mammy, right? So anyway, we go in there, and the girl takes our, pie and fresh whipped cream. So he orders. He goes, "Which you like, apple or cherry?" And I go, I'm thinking, he goes, "We'll both have a cherry and apple with a big bowl of cream." And you drink coffee? Yeah, a pot of coffee. So, she brings it out with the tray. We're sitting at the counter. We have 2 pies, big bowl of this cream that was like unbelievable. And, boom, on apple, best pie, and the apple pie, and they're still hot with the cold cream on top, and coffee, and we're and we hear pots and pans and screaming and all kinds of stuff coming from the kitchen. And he asked the girl behind the counter, "What's wrong with Mammy?" She goes, "Oh, the fridge is on the fritz again." And so I just get up, I walk in the back, and I go, "Ma'am, what's wrong?" And she goes, "Who are you?" I said, "I'm with Sarge, but I think I can fix your fridge." And it's a walk-in, right? And not only is it a walk-in, but it's a walk-in, and it doesn't have refrigerant. It doesn't have regular refrigerant. It's got ammonia, which no one touches. It's really deadly, and she's freaking out, right? So I go in, I look at the compressor, I look at the whole thing, and ammonia can freeze the condenser coil, right? And so all you have to do is a little. I said, "You got a little pot, So I put water in it. I kind of put it on the burner. I don't get it boiling. I just get it warm, and I just pour it over the condenser, and things starts working." She goes, "That's all it takes?" I said, "Yep, that's all it takes." And she goes, "I've been trying. This thing's been screwed up, and they want to use, put a new whole system in. Well, they want $5,000. I don't have $5,000." I said, "That's all you got to do." She goes, "Can you fix other stuff?" I said, "I can fix anything." She goes, "Do you have a place to stay?" I go, "Well, I'm on my friend's couch." And I said, No. Do you have your own place?" I said, "No." And so she goes, "Come upstairs." And the upstairs had been in the 1920s a speakeasy, and this was a speakeasy, and it was also, had girls up there, so it had lots of bedrooms, really nice shower, a really nice kitchen, and this big, gigantic room with a stage, and it was no windows. The bedrooms had windows, but the speakeasy had no windows. And she goes, "You want to stay here and just fix things?" And I said, "Sounds like a plan." So I go back down. And I have breakfast, not breakfast, but, Sarge goes, "Oh, I see you made a friend." And she comes out, "This boy is the best. I love this guy." And the chef, Sarge looks at me and I've only been there 4 days, right? So my new best friend is the guy who runs the town. But he's like not the mayor. He's not he's not any of those guys, but he runs the frigging town. And he's a nice guy, meaning the black people like him, the white people like him. And the rich people like him because he makes everything work fine. He does his best, right? So, he's saying, okay, not only, do I have my own photographer now, but he's obviously going to work out very fine in the town, right? So, and that was High Point. Everyone got along. Everyone was very respectful. Mr. Smith, Mr. Jones. There wasn't, and everyone knew each other, right? So it was quite, and everyone was, not prejudiced. They weren't stuck in their beliefs. They, got along with each other, right? And the town was a great town, And so, and surrounding it was just tobacco as far as you could see, and everybody was sharecroppers, right? And anyway, and that's what I learned. What a redneck is: some guy who works in the farm, and the sun, gives him a suntan on his neck. So, my first big shoot was to go to Greensboro and do this hanging, right? So I go into the storeroom of cameras, and High Point Enterprise, 1968. This was a cold type, meaning most newspapers had linotype machines, which are really strange machine that has this well of lead, and it spits it in, and it makes letters as you hit like a typewriter. It sticks the letter into this drum, and the drum goes on the newspaper. So, but the newest technology, so everything in 1968, everyone who wrote a thing had a computer and typed it into the computer, send it to the editor, edited it in the computer, hit the button, sent it over, and it made, instead of lead type, it put it in a plastic mold, and that was what went on the drum instead of the lead thing. So instead of having, like, most newspapers needed hundreds of people to do all of that, this guy wrote it, guy edited it, guy sent it to the guy who had the machine that made the plate and plastic and stuck it on the thing. So instead of having hundreds of people, it had like 10, 20 to do the whole thing. And it's called cold type, or at least it was called cold type. So that newspaper was one of the leading technological, and it had, it got stuck, those machines, basically back in the day, what do you call it? Faxing, it's like it had faxing. I could send, the computer information to other, to Reuters and to the UPI and all that. So it was probably had more higher technology than the New York Times or the, Washington Post or anything. I mean, it was really leading edge. So the whole town was like that, right? And everyone got along. Everyone had equal, like I said, the guys coming out of the factory, the white guy was this Plymouth and the black guy, the same Plymouth. They just kind of went to different sides of the town. The black side was as nice or nicer than the white side, except for the rich people. The rich people had it really nice. Like the guy who owned the newspaper, the guy who owned the factory. Those guys had, and the furniture mart guy. Anyway, so my first big shot that I was going to take, and I did some photos of weddings and, flower shows, but the first, like, newsworthy thing, which is this, my editor sent me out on this thing, because he saw the stuff I shot. He said, boy, these murder shots are really great. And so the newspaper got to use the first thing I ever got on, page 6, which is after the front page, page 6 was the big photo page, was the murder shots I took. So anyway, he sent me off to shoot this hanging, right? And so Greensboro was not High Point. It was like white, it was like, and everybody hated everybody. Not just the white people hated the black people and black people hated the white. No, everybody hated everybody, feared each other. It was a pecking order like you couldn't believe. Now, the sheriff, by this time, because I moved into the, the place above the teacup, and one morning I came down and there's the mayor, there's the sheriff, there's the sarge, guy, my boss who owns the newspaper, the other guy who owned the bank, the other guy who owned the mart. They'd all have breakfast at about 8 in the morning, 7:30, 8 in the morning. And they had this like section that was their section. Nobody sat there except the rich guys, right? And then the counter was everybody else. And then there were other little sections that other little groups had within the pecking order of the administration. But like all the court people were there, everybody. And it was in that black part of town. But it was Pink Teacup, best food ever. Because breakfast, lunch, and the place pretty much opened up at 5 and closed at like 2, right? So, and people were still working in the kitchen all the time. So anyway, I came down and I was wearing, a bathrobe and, slippers and, a pair of shorts, and that was about it. and I come down this staircase that there's only one place. No one ever goes up this staircase. It went up, they didn't use it till the 20s, but I come down this staircase like a movie star, and the sheriff and everybody's just looking up at me like, I come down and to have breakfast with those guys. And they go, we hear that you're living upstairs. I said, yeah, man, it is great. And he goes, the mayor says, I don't know, Al. And what do you mean you don't know? What's the problem? He goes, well, this is the black side of town. I said, So what? I'm an African American that's melanin challenged, and the sheriff kind of spat his coffee out, and the sergeant's laughing, and the banker is like scratching his head, and my boss is like, don't look at me. And I said, what you guys eat here all the freaking time. The only thing different is I get to eat breakfast before you do. That's it. And isn't Mammy a lot happier? She's not yelling at you guys anymore, right? That's because I keep fixing everything for her. So I'm making your life better. And they kind of think about it. And the mayor goes, Al, everybody here loves you so much. But if there were more of you, we'd have to kill you. There's only one of you, and we can handle that. But if there were any more of you, if they were like you were a type of person, we'd have to kill you. But because you're only one of, we love you. We always do this when we see you do stuff, and usually you do it in a way that's so much better than what we thought was going to happen. It's okay. But if there were more of you, we'd have to kill you. But so don't have any children here, at least not here. And then I think I forgot which one was about to say something, and Mammy was looking at him, and he just he said, and don't have any black girlfriends or black babies, or he was going to say something like that, and Mammy just kind of looked at him and he shut up. And that's everything worked in that town, whereas in Greensboro was not that case. So I like to get to places. If I'm going to do something, I get there way ahead of time. I plan it out. I think about what I'm going to do. So I won't have any, and if something screws up, I'll have a backup plan, right? So I get there, the things will be at 6. I get there around, 10 in the morning. I have breakfast before sunup. Mammy, I tell her to wake me up. She gets me up around 5. I have nice breakfast. I've already packed up my car with everything I was going to take. And so I get to the sheriff around 10, and I brought a nice box of baked goods from Mammy, right? And so, and it's pink. It's a pink box with teacups on it, right? And so, and everybody within miles of High Point knows this place, the Pink Teacup. Anybody in North Carolina knows this place. So I show up and I bring that to the sheriff, and because my sheriff says, hey, make sure you get some baked goods from Mammy before you go. So I do. And so I show up around 10, just about when his coffee break is, and I say, hi, I'm from High Point. The Enterprise sent me, and the sheriff called you, told me, hi. He goes, oh, yeah. I said, yeah, good. And we shake hands. We said, I give him the pink, he looks at it, he smiles. You want a cup of coffee? Man, get him a cup of coffee. So with that, and, I have one little cookie that I like, but the rest were his. And he's just pigging out and just having a grand old time. And I bought him enough for like the next couple of days. So he goes, no problem. So he calls in the lieutenant and 2 sergeants, and all the people are going to be there for the hanging. And the guy who is in charge of the courthouse is there too. So he introduced me to everybody, right? And so he goes, he's going to be here. He's going to take pictures all day long. And he's from the High Point Enterprise. And so we all get on, and they all have a cookie, and everyone's like, we're all good. We're all in the same, right? So I go, can I take some pictures here in the police department and over in the courthouse? And yeah. I mean, there's nobody, sure. This is a good, you're right on time, because, once the crowd gets in here and other people here, you might not be able to have what you might want to do, but sure, go ahead. So I did. I took my Nikon and I clicked a lot of stuff, talked to people, wrote it down, took, click of each of them. And then by that time, it was about 1:00. And so I kind of start, and the sun is perfect, and so I'm walking around down right there in the square, and I'm taking pictures of the square and the tree, and I'm saying, "Ye old nigger hanging tree." Take a couple pictures of that, and I set my my tripod and my large format camera and all my stuff like right where I wanted it, and it was like in a nice place where no one could. It was like in this grass and you know, there's a little fence there, so people had to like climb over the fence to get at my stuff. And there were by about 2 o'clock when I started setting stuff up, there were a couple of cops there, you know, putting things out to, you know, control the crowd. And I said, "Is it okay if I put?" "Oh yeah, no problem. Yeah, keep it there." Yeah. And I put my car. I said, "It's okay if I park my car right here, so I can just, you know, do this." And, "Oh, yeah, no problem." So, you know, they put a couple little cones by my car and put a little police kind of thing on it saying it's okay to be there. And I go around and I take more pictures. And then, you know, the thing is going to go on in the courtroom around 4 o'clock. So I come in, I sit in a place, you know, vantage point and right by the door so I can leave if I want to leave without disturbing anyone. So, you know, I take a couple pictures before when there's nobody in it, and then people come in. I take a few pictures of those. I talk to the DA guy. I take a picture of him. You know, I've already talked to the judge, took a picture of him, and took notes on everything and found out about the story. And the basic story was that this guy was a well-known young black man, and he had been going to college, and he had said something inappropriate and raped a girl. Said something inappropriate and raped a girl. Okay. And I didn't take it any further than that. I just wrote that down. And so, he's, you know, basically they bring him in. He gets charged. There is no real hearing. There is, you know, 12 white guys. And, you know, they... the judge just reads the thing. He looks at them. The guy says up, "Guilty." And the guy who is the, you know, charged with it's not even there. You know, so take a few pictures of that. But by this time, there's a ton of people in there, right? And before, you know, as soon as you know, a couple pictures of this, and I don't use any strobe. There's lots of sunlight. I take all of that, and but there are other guys from other newspapers, from the Greensboro newspaper and the other surrounding. They are, you know, and so I'm very low key. I'm sitting over there. As soon as they say guilty, and I don't even see the guy who's being charged, I kind of go out and get myself ready, right? And so, in between me going around doing that and me being in the courtroom, there's about a 2-hour period, like between 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock, 3:30. I kind of walk and I see black people kind of like looking, you know, like from the backs of alleys, and you know, and I go talk to them and get the story from them, and they just say this kid was just set up. You know, they're just going to hang up another black young man who should. You know, he was a promising young man. He was going to college, and there's no way that he did what they say he did. And this is just a kangaroo court. And I said, "Can I take a picture?" "Oh, I don't think so." So, and their names, you know, no, I don't think so. So, but I just say, you know, tell me what's going on. And so they were just amazed that somebody wanted to hear their side of the point, and that I was totally open to not have to get their name or take a picture or anything, just what, you know. So I go, So, you know, so as soon as they declare him guilty and he's going to be hung, like within 40 minutes, and they're taking all kinds of pictures in there, and then big crowds in there. And but before, as soon as I said, you know, when I saw there was no guy, and the judge just read the thing and then said to the jury, and the jury said guilty, that's when I said, okay. And I just slowly went out the door, and the crowd was already there, and they weren't coming out. So I got over to where I was. I got all set up, and I dragged this guy out, and he is unconscious basically, and he's in his underpants. and they just, drag him down the steps, boom, 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 take him across, and there's a big crowd of maybe, I don't know, at least 500 people, if not 1,000. The whole thing is, and it's like a carnival-esque, and they put the thing around his neck, and it goes over the tree, and you can see where this big rope has been over this tree. It's kind of worn, a gigantic limb, like this big, and the rope goes over, and it's kind of burnt the bark off, and they tie it around the back of a police car, and they put the thing around the guy's neck, and they just slowly move the police car, and the guy goes up in the air, and he's already kind of basically, so he's just kind of quivering, but the crowd goes nuts. And I just, I do 10, click, 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 put it back in the suitcase. And before I move on, I take all that equipment, put it in the suitcase, put it in the trunk, kind of go around and just take pictures with my Nikon of the crowd going, really close at a 28. And, it's basically a fisheye, but it looks like a 55 when you print the picture. So anyway, I did all of that. And the sheriff looked at me, and I looked at him, and I said, "Really?" And he goes, "Son, you should just leave." And I said, "Okay, Sheriff, I will. I'll see you. I'll give my sheriff your regards. You do that, son." So I get in my car and I drive out of town. And this one black guy slumming, so I pull over and pick him up, and he goes, "Thank you. I just wanted to get out of town before the people went crazy." And he goes, "You should go here and take a right, and then go over this way and take a right, and then over here, and let me off there, and then take that road all the way, and you won't have anybody to deal with, right? And they don't like outsiders, and people have been watching you and seeing what you're doing, and you were talking to us, and don't come back." So, I did, and again, the sun was up, so I didn't get lost. I popped me out on the, main road back to High Point, a third, I kind of knocked off a third of the county road. And so I definitely got out of that county before I popped out on the county road and got back to High Point before it got dark, right? And I went to the guy who does the photolithography, the guy who takes the picture and then takes this other picture of it and then turns it into a plate. But he's a super duper darkroom guy. I mean, really. And my negatives were the same size that he used in his photolithography. So he was set up to do that, right? So I said, and they had a machine, so 30, and like I said, these guys were high end. And they had a machine where it was like a changing bag. You took your roll of film, your 35 or your 2 1/4, and you put it in the changing bag thing. You took it out so no light was exposed, and there was these slats that you just fed it in, and you pushed a button that's inside that, and would just suck it in there, and it would develop automatically your negative, right? Either 35 millimeter, or you just had to put it in the slot and put it on the sprockets, and it would suck it in. Whereas the 10 by 10s, I had the other guy develop them. And so, within, an hour, I had the negatives. And then I had him print them in his photolitho thing, right? And so you get a lithography, a litho image of it, which was super duper better than it being developed in like photo paper, right? It's a lot crisper. It was almost digital. And again, this is way before digital, but these machines were quite extraordinary. And there was, me, I'm a moron. I can make mistakes. These machines did everything the same way all the time. And I knew my exposures were right on. And so anyway, he had them. So within 2 hours of me starting this process, everything was print dried, boom, boom, right? So I took these up to my editor and I said, here are the pictures. And he just kind of went, and I said, and I gave him my little black book of my notes of what people said. And I gave him that. And he's reading it and goes, this is amazing work. This is great. This is amazing. And then he goes, but we can't print this. I said, what? He goes, no, you told the story too clearly. This is a white newspaper. Even though black people read it, this is a white newspaper. And you basically said exactly what happened. The guy was lynched, by the state. He didn't experience jurisprudence, And not only can I not print it in this newspaper, I don't think I could print this in any newspaper. And he goes, what I am going to do is I'm going to put this out into the Reuters, because he had these feeds. He says, I'm going to take all of what you have here and put it out into the Reuters feed, right? Which is planetary, right? So, goes out there, and, a couple weeks later, my editor says, you might get an award for this. I said, what? He said, yeah, well, I sent it out in the Reuters feed, and it went, it got published in Moscow, and it got published in Paris, and it got published in lots of places in Europe, but nothing in England, or nothing in, but these other countries that, have a hard time with America, they published it, and you might get a Pulitzer. I said, what? He said, well, the work is definitely at that level, and your reporting was excellent, so yeah, but you might not. I go, what do you mean? He goes, well, Pulitzer is like, even though it's an international kind of award, it's very American, right? So, and what was truly, even more damning about what you did was you weren't prejudiced. You didn't take it from like a commie point of view, or I'm going to make, go after America point of view. No, you were like, you did what a newspaper is supposed to do, just tell the story. And anyway, he goes, but I'm not, no one in America has seen this, period. It's going out in Reuters, but they sent it straight to Europe, and it didn't go to anywhere in America. So I got like a honorable mention. I didn't get a Pulitzer Prize, but I got an honorable mention, and that's what got me into Magnum, right? So that was that. So, and then when I came back to New York, and about I came back to New York in 1970, and that's when Marion Tulin put me into Hofstra. I became a college boy, and then I went to Juilliard, and then I went off to Trinity, right? And so, when I was in Juilliard, I was living on the West Side when it was still kind of funky, the upper West Side, right? Because Juilliard's near Lincoln Center, and that's, upper Midtown West Side. And anything above 75th Street in those days, especially on the West Side, which I lived in this, cold water flat in the Upper West Side. And, I was paying $20 a month for a nice little apartment. And anyway, so I've had so many apartments in New York. It's mind-boggling, because New York was like the world. You go 4 blocks over that way, it's another part of the planet, That's what I loved about New York. So back to Little Italy and Howard's building, right? So Howard's stiffed the old ladies. It's freezing winter. My dad is, found me after 7 years of not seeing him. And, he knocks on the door, and he's in the hallway, and snow's blowing out my front door onto him, and he sees me wrapped in a sheet, and there's a black girl kind of naked in my bed, and she's got a sheet wrapped around her. But right where we were was this big radiator, so it was nice and toasty. I just kind of hit the switch and the boiler went on, and like I said, it was 70 degrees when we went to sleep, and 20 and snowing inside my apartment 6 hours later. And but we were toasty, but there was a snowdrift by the front door. And so anyway, and again, that just a couple blocks, it was mobsters and poor people and drugs, and it was like 73, I think. I hadn't gone to Jamaica yet. Yeah, so 73. So anyway, so that was my dad seeing me there, and then I don't see him for another 6 years, and see, that was good. I didn't need to see my family. They were feral squirrels. Freudenscheid feral squirrels. That was my family, and so and black people to me were human beings. I was breastfed by Mamo. And the other kid who was on the other tit was Emily. And she and I were twins. And we were, up until about 6, we were inseparable, and we still are. I mean, well, she's going up to Rome. She went up to Rome in 1980, and she's a doctor, she's an art, she's everything. Emily's like, phew. So, and everyone in Mamo's family were highly educated. Mamo was, and it's like, anyway. So, to draw this all back to the same point where all the threads are coming together. So, I'm coming home one day to that building, right? And I haven't heard from Howard in 6 weeks, and now spring is it's not snowing anymore, and it's like maybe end of March, early April, and it's warmish, and so, but and I've done a amazing job to keep grandmas from dying in their rent-controlled apartments, and the mobsters are again saying, "See, he's such a good boy." So I'm walking in, and this girl who she lives in that apartment. She's going to see one of her grandma. She lives with her grandma. She's maybe 1922, somewhere there, 1922, somewhere in between. She's going to NYU, and she's a nice Italian girl, and she's maybe 100 yards in front of me, and there's this guy with a ponytail, and he's like between us, right? So I'm kind of running, and so she, goes, there's a key, so I put, the door is never locked. I put locks on those doors, so she, opens the door with her key, and she's in the vestibule looking at the mail slot, and this guy with a ponytail is right behind her, right? And he's like right in there. And I go, oh, this is not good. So I go, and he's on top of her, and he's going to rape her, and he is like, isn't doing it. And I kind of kick him and say, get the fuck out of here. And, she has hit the buzzers of all the apartments, right? And the guy shoots out of the place and is running down Mulberry to 6th Avenue, and he's got a ponytail, right? And it's, I couldn't tell whether it's red or blonde, but it's not dark. It's like light hair, ponytail. He had a jacket, right? He had a, and so anyway, so within 10 minutes, not 10 minutes, within 1 minute, a couple of the guys, and then a whole bunch of the young mobsters are there, and they're like, and they got baseball bats, and they're looking at me, and the girl, I've got the girl, and I'm like, they're looking at me like almost about to club me, and then hey, what are you doing? It's me. And he went out the door, he went up McDougal, I think he's heading towards 6th Avenue. He's got a ponytail, he's got a kind of red or yellow, or he's got light hair. Anyway, so, they all run out, about 10 of them. And, a couple of the grandmas come down and get the girl and bring her upstairs. And they go make sure they, don't do anything stupid, right? So I, like 3 minutes later, I'm out the door, I'm running, and I find these guys. And in the alley, they are clubbing a guy with their baseball bats. And he's obviously not the guy. He doesn't even have a ponytail. He's, he's got, he's just a worker guy. And he's like, and he's trying to keep himself from getting killed. And I get in, yo, stop it. He's not the guy. He's not. And they're adrenalists. And they turn to him more. It's me, not the guy. The guy's got a ponytail. He's blondish, and he's got a red jacket on. It's not the guy. And they beat him up pretty bad, but they didn't seem to really break anything, or, but he protected himself good enough. And anyway, so they ran down the road, and so I, take care of the guy. Policeman shows up. Now, these are all mobsters, so the cops don't really get involved, but they take him to St. Vincent's. And I just say, say to the cops, what happened? And they go, okay. And I said, what you need to do is, they're all Billy's boys. So you go talk to Mike and get Billy, whatever this guy's bill is, he needs to be removed, and this has happened before. So it's not like anything that's not new, right? So they take him to St. Vincent's, and the guy gets taken care of. Anyway, the next morning, I'm going over to Mr. Tucci-Fritos to get my espresso and my those nice little Italian pastries that crisp on the outside and ricotta, sweet ricotta on the inside. And I'm going over there, and there is a handball court on the Thompson Street. And the cops are all there, right? And so I asked Mr. Cucifrito, so what's, it's the guy who beat up, who tried to rape Marianne. He's over in the, they put him up on the roof and they dropped him off, right? So this policeman I know, a detective, comes over and he goes, "Ow, did you see the guy who tried to rape Marianne?" I said, "Well, I can give you a fair description. He was a white guy. He had a ponytail. He had a red jacket, and he had lightish hair, whether it was red or blonde or brown, was somewhere in between, right? And he was kind of tallish, thin, and I saw him from the side. He had a very strange ear." He goes, "Oh, well, I think they got the right guy." So what do you mean? So, well, they found a guy, and they beat him up on the roof, and then they threw him off the roof, 6 stories down, smashed through the hoops of the basketball court, and, ripped off his arms, and the rest of him went through the hoop and smashed his head like a melon on the ground. But he had a red jacket, he had a ponytail, and he had strange ears. I don't know whether it was from him going through the hoop or not, but I think I would say it's a strong 80% that they got the right guy. And pretty much that was the kind of justice they had, right? So I compared that with what happened in Greensboro to that. And that pretty much the police killed 5 to 10 black men a week in the 1970s. When New York was bankrupt, and instead of having 30,000 cops, they had 12,000, right? So they shot first and asked questions later. So that's policing in America, pretty much. And pretty much policing around the world, because you have to realize that police are there to protect the rich and not the poor. And so that's the end of the story. But what's the interesting thing about our time right now, this Valentine's Day, why Valentine's Day 2022 is important is that from this point on, the world is not going to be the same. We're not just going to do the same thing over and over, because as the power structure wants to rebrand the, as I call it, the tomorrow and the tomorrow and the tomorrow and no. We are now firmly in the Aquarian age, and consciousness is going to rule. And depending on how we allow ourselves to do our best, because by doing our best, not trying, doing our best, will open the door to the consciousness of so say we all. The we and me, all our relations. That's what consciousness is about. And right now, we stand on the precipice of enabling humanity and all our relations to get along, to have it work out. Rodney King, just didn't say, "Can't we just all get along?" He didn't just, an advertising agency didn't. He was being conscious intent when he said that. He was consciously. He got his ass kicked. And he could have been the, the word that the N word, which I hate saying the N word, the nigger. He could have been the nigger, but he didn't. He was the human being. He was the African American, right? That was trying to do the best, do his best, right? And now, none of us are perfect. So I'm consciously aware and have consciously intent maybe 60% of the time, maybe 80 when I have a good day, 80% of the time. But the other, 40 to 20%, I'm a moron, Let's see. Martin Young. Yeah, Bob. How's things? Things are good. It's Valentine's Day, Martin. Happy Valentine's Day, right? Sweet dreams, dude. Yeah, thank you, Fishy. We can meet up. Yep. Sleepy time. Yep, Anthony. So, Anthony, I've tried to call you a few times, so you stay well. Everyone, hopefully coming to Smoky Mountains very soon. Yep. So that's the idea. Now there's three of you there. So that's, this show is a nice little trail through lots of different threads. And like I said, if you were to look at what's, the media is saying, it's like the end of times, right? But no, it's not, They're trying, we're going for the big splat. I've been talking about the big splat for the last 3 years, right? And, we were like Wile E. Coyote with the Acme fireworks strapped to our back, And so we can either end up at the bottom of the chasm, or we can do our best and be, like, as they say in the advertisement, all you can be, right? Just do your best. You don't have to be perfect, So, anyway, it's 1 hour, 58 minutes. It's 8 o'clock. I've been sitting here, so I'm about to rust, so I got to get up and walk around a little. So you stay well, everyone, and I'll see you in the morning, or the afternoon, or the evening tomorrow. But I'll see you tomorrow. So you get out there and just have a great. Thanks. Just finished my shift over. Guess this evening. Oh, well, that's a lot of beers and a lot of. What kind of food do you? What's your taka? What's your food? Yes, busy. Do you have a nice spread? Do you have a nice dinner, or do you just have beer or bar food? What's your taka? In Australia, food at a bar is taka, right? Very much Cornish local food. Okay, that's nice. I like Cornish local food. Yep. Vegetables and a little chickie and a little lamb and potatoes and nice bread, steak, seafood, all local. Oh, that's, yeah, well, you sound like a high-end Cornish sounding place. Produce is from around 5 Mile. Yep. From, what do they call it? From farm to plate, right? And that's a good thing, you know. I might even have to get I wonder if my inoculation thing would be good enough as a passport. Chips, all our own, fries. Yep, I'm a chip guy. I lived in London on Paddington Station, so the food I ate was Pakistani and fish and chips. You know, those were my two go-to things. Cooked in beef drippings. Yum, yum, yum. But, London is a lot like New York in a lot of ways. You know, Paris, London, Istanbul, whatever. Gutenberg, New York. Those cities. See, LA is not like any of those others. LA is kind of its own thing. But those others are like any city that's older than 200 or 300 years and is very, that also has lots of foreigners in it, very cosmopolitan. You know, that's, no, I'm not a Facebook guy. You know, it's just YouTube. And you want to get a hold of me at the dudeawake42@gmail, dudeawake42@gmail, and throw something into that PayPal. And it's, people have, and it's my birthday, and it seems to work. No one has complained. Some people seem to not be able to do it. I don't know how to do it, you know. It shows up, enough people do it that it's pretty good. So let's see, it's 8 o'clock here, so 9, 10, 11, 12, 1 o'clock. So it's about 1 o'clock, 1:30 your time, right, Martin? Give or take? Edinburgh. Yeah, I like Edinburgh too. Like I said, any city that's over 200 years old and is cosmopolitan, you know, has people from all over the world, that's the kind of city I like. And London's that way, New York's that way, Paris is that way, like I said, Istanbul and Gutenberg. There are other cities too, but those are my 5 favorite cities that I've lived in, not just visited, lived in, right? And so I went to Damascus in Syria. I went to Cairo. I went to Baghdad. And these are all in the 70s, before the Arab Spring, before that whole neck of the woods was destroyed by the neocon / neoliberal global loony motif. And basically what happened to that neck of the woods, they want to, like Syria was an amazing country. It had such diversity in every kind of culture and religion. They had Buddhist monasteries there. They had, just temples like from every religion, and everyone respected all. And then, ISIS destroyed everything, right? So that is the business plan of Mr. Globaloni, is to destroy all that and then rebuild the plastic, fantastic, where everyone is player one. Stanton Circle is actually older than Stonehenge. Yes, all 3 miles from the pub. Yep. Syria was full of ancient history. They blew the shit out of it. I love history. It's my hobby. Was that where they destroyed The two giant Buddhist statues. Yep. And not just two statues. They took out virtually every element. And I went there as a, whatchamacallit, itinerant scholar. I was taken to a lot of very interesting places to look at, ancient things that were, everything old is new. I was looking at ancient technology, which is, light years ahead of whatever we have. Yep, that's criminal. And that's, the corporate structure. What did all of that in the Arab Spring was the corporate structure. And the corporate structure is fascism. Exactly what, Mussolini, you should read Mussolini's thesis. He was an economist, and he's the guy who invented, fascism. It comes from that Roman symbol of, the double-headed hatchet that's covered in straw thatch. That's, the fascists. And what's interesting was when Rockefeller built Rockefeller Center, that building in the 30s, Mussolini had his artisans make the fascist symbol light fixtures. And so all through the Rockefeller Center, there's two tall office towers, and then Rockefeller Center, the theater, and the skating rink, and a whole bunch of other stuff. It's kind of the beginning. It's kind of like the World Trade Center was based on the Rockefeller Center. So all the light fixtures and all the halls and all those buildings in the theaters were the fascist symbol, and they pretty much kept them there all the way through the 70s. I don't know, when GE bought the building, whether they kept the fascist symbolism still there. But that's the corporate entity. Fascism, capitalism is when capital controls the government, right? Communism is when the government controls the capital. And fascism is when the government is the corporate state. Where, those capitalism and communism were these two different things. And Marx said, first there's capitalism, and then there's socialism, and then there's communism, then socialism, and then this other thing that I haven't figured out yet. Well, that's fascism. And that's what Mussolini, when he wrote his PhD thesis, that's what he said. The thing that will be ruling the world is fascism, right? And it got rolled out and it's the most incompetent. It's the worst of all worlds. You thought communism was the worst of all worlds. No, fascism's the worst. All you have to do is, you ever see the movie Brazil? That movie came out in the 70s, and someone said, Al, you have to go see Brazil. Robert De Niro's playing you in the future. And he was, because he was a guy who worked for the utility corporation, and he liked doing it right. And everyone said, nah, just, who cares? And so he became, like, they called him a terrorist, because he would go fix people's toilets, right? and that's kind of what I did when I was in Soho, because it was all DC, and I made rectifiers. And the DC wasn't metered, right? But it was still in these buildings. They just built these wooden boxes around them, filled them full of tars, because all the subways ran off of that DC. So until they changed that in the 80s and 90s, it was still running off the old, Edison dynamotor system. And so they had these, copper wires coming up these buildings that, they couldn't cut it off except at that point on each floor, because they didn't want to disrupt the system, in the subways and underground. So all I did was make a rectifier, and I had these big spikes that I had welding cable attached to, and I would pound them into the DC, and then it would run through a rectifier, and you get AC out the other side. So all the artist guys, I made about 300 of these and did it to 300 lofts in Soho and areas nearby, Tribeca. And, that was I was world famous for that one. So that was me. I was playing, Robert De Niro was playing me in the future. So go watch the movie Brazil. Terry Gilliam. Ooh, baby. That's a scary, strange, funny, hilarious movie that's very similar to what we are living in right now. Portals, yep. So, anyway, 2 hours and 9 minutes. So, Martin, did you were you born there in that part of England, or were you born someplace else, or what's your story? Is your restaurant? Did you make it, or was it part of your lineage, your father, grandfather, and great grand? And what's the story? Just been you a little email. Oh, okay. I'll take a look. And so I look forward to hearing from anybody at the dudeawake42@gmail. Anyone wants to throw something in the old PayPal, that would be duly appreciated, because it's kind of, that's like, I get about $400, and that's my little pillow, is my PayPal. And the cadre here is great, right? It's family. And Martin, you have a establishment that you could use to spread that cadre spirit around. You could, do music, theater, and support whatever cultural motifs are in your neighborhood. You already kind of are, if you like supporting your farmers and you're getting all your food from your neighborhood. That might be great. You might expand the idea of gardening to your neighbors. There's a lot of stuff you can do. You start your own, if you have a business, so I took over abandoned buildings in the 80s with a bunch of people, and we housed the homeless. And these weren't like, homeless people. These were people who were working stiffs, and then the oil embargo it was the disruption that kind of changed America, right? And that's what gave us China, because, Nixon opened up the door to China, and then the oil embargo changed the economics to where it made more sense to manufacture things in China than it did in America, right? And it's very similar to what England did after the War of 1812, and it moved all its kind of industry from, England into the United States, right? And it's, basically its major industry was, making cloth, right? So, and they went from that into making weapons, right? So, anyway, the special relationship started after the War of 1812, because the English just came straight up the Potomac, burnt D.C. to the ground. All the founding fathers were doddering old fools. And they said, okay, mothers, you're now our bitches. You do what we say. We gave you, 25 years of screwing around. Now we're just going to use you as the poster boy. You're going to be our bitches. And that's, it was. I was born in Scotland, Arden, and was brought up in Wales. Yeah. Well, Wales it's like, Scotland's up here, Wales is over here, and the rest of no man's land is in between. And my two favorite places in the United Kingdom is Scotland and Wales, right? And Northern Ireland, I lived in Ireland so many times, and I went up to Northern Ireland a few times just to check it out, and it was such a sad place, and I went and talked to everyone on either side, and such a sad, sad thing. And so, but it, they did end the Troubles, and they did it by economics, and that's what this is about. And we are at a really amazing point in time of history, because will either be thrown back into a dystopian dark age of what was that movie? Where I can't believe I forgot the name of. You know, it's in the 70s or 80s. Harrison Ford was. He's always looking for the clones that are running away, and it's always raining, and you know, and everyone's eating noodles out in the rain, and oh, it's right on the tip of my tongue. But that's the world, you know, and it was written by that guy who wrote all those great science fiction and mystery novels with a made up name. Anyway, we're either going to have heaven on earth relatively soon, and the technology will work out fine, or well, we'll have a dystopian Orwellian Blade Runner. That's the movie, you know, Orwellian Blade Runner, Brazil. So, Martin, did you see the movie Brazil? You know, Robert De Niro's playing me in the future. Or right now, I couldn't do that gig anymore. I'm like really old. I really hobble around. You know, I should be dead, you know, but I'm not. And I love it. I want to just kill myself. Oh, life sucks so bad, you know. And you're like young and healthy, and you know, no. Have a good time, no matter where you are. See, it doesn't matter where you are. You can have a good time. I haven't yet, no, but I have the day off tomorrow. We'll check it out. Yep, Blade Runner and Brazil. Those two movies. And another one, my three movies I suggest that will give you a good world view is another movie called Zardos with Sean Connery. In the 70s, after he stopped being, he didn't want to be typecast as James Bond. He could have done it forever. He was the best James Bond. He did all these, like The Man Who Would Be King with Michael Caine. That's another great movie. He did a movie called Time Bandits, which is another really interesting, great movie. And another movie in the 70s, or yes, I think it was 70s or early 80s, Everything You Know Is Wrong. And it's basically the guys that did 9/11 watched that movie because that movie is exactly what happened with 9/11. And what the most interesting part of that movie was all of the backstory of who was financing what, where, what came, and it was straight up, you know, that it was Saudi Arabia was the in-between person. All the people who did it were Saudi Arabian folk, and it was, you know, not just the CIA, but Bana Manhaf gang and Mossad and Hail Hydra, you know. And that's the other good movie to go see is original Blade Runner, or the original. Always go to the original movie. And sometimes the knockoff ain't bad either. But I haven't seen the new one, so I don't know. But the original, I mean, Harrison Ford plays, you know, just great. I mean, that movie, and the guy who's one of the clones. Now, everything about that, the original Blade Runner, that's the one. Yeah. So, and Zardos, and all those movies that Sean Connery did in the 70s, and that one that is like exactly what happened with 9/11, but they made the movie in the 70s. It was like you know, some guys in the, you know, neocons saw that movie, hey, we should do this, you know. And Zardos, go see Zardos, because that's exactly where we are, right on that edge. And it really, you know, because AI is like taking it over, and it's totally neurotic, and all the, you know, people like, you know, Billy Foreskin and Billy Micro Miniature Penis, you know, you know, not going to be a fun place. I'm glad I did all the stuff I did in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and early O's, right? And then after, you know, and I kept, you know, college, I just kept doing my best. And then around 2006, I said, you know, I'm just going to become a hedonist, you know? And I did for 10 years. Like I said, I gained 240 pounds. If you ever seen the, again, Monty Python movie Meaning to Life, and they had all the sex and gluttony and this. They have gluttony, and they had this guy named Mr. Creosote, and he was like, 20 feet wide. He's at a restaurant, and they just keep eating this most unbelievable rich food, and he gets that last morsel in his mouth, and he explodes. And parts of his, head, his face lands on this lady's head, and she's wearing it as a hat, and his liver is on this other guy, and that was me. I was Mr. Creosote, But instead of blowing up, I died in a plate of spaghetti, came back, and decided, I had a life review, and my master said, no, you're going back. You haven't finished. You agreed to do this. You've done a great job so far. Why mess it up? No, you're going back. Yeah, you're going to pay for it. You're not miserable. So I'm never miserable. But right now, I have to move, or else I'm not going to be giving up, right? Let's see. Brazil, yes, I remember this movie with hot chick in it. Cannot recall name of the actress. Yes, she's kind of like a German or Swedish hot chick. No, I'm thinking of another movie. I just saw a clip now. Highly imaginative. Yep. So I've given you a whole bunch. You can go back and look at the last 5-10 minutes of this, and where I've given you a whole bunch of things to go look at. So, okay, I'll go look at your email. I'll email you back. I have to go stretch and do a little Tai Chi, or else I'm not going to move tomorrow. So, okay, let's see, 2 hours, 20 minutes. 21 seconds, I'm going to hit the button here. So this was a fun show. I covered a lot of stuff. Remember, guys, go back and see these again. And Martin, if you can put it on thumb drives, put it on CD-ROM, optical thing would be good. There we go. I'm out of here. Love you. Happy Valentine's Day. I love you. Kiss, kiss. Coochie, 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 coochie.